Ta-da! And welcome to Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, just a little bit of housekeeping. You don't need to like or follow or subscribe or any of that nonsense. You're busy enough on YouTube doing that as it is. I just put the videos out there where I can, and I have a holly jolly great time doing so. Now this is a quick one and surprisingly important, and amazingly, there's just not that much out there regarding this. So I thought I'd just give you the straight answer to the question that many of you, especially new to the hobby, may be chasing. Now, forgive the mess as we scramble to get the layout functional by the Christmas of 2023. As you know, I've gone down the path of using the DCC CONCEPTS Cobalt Digital IP turnout motors, or point motors as you may be calling them. Again, if you've purchased the club pack or 6 or 12 pack, they'll come in this type of box. If you've purchased them individually, they'll be in this box. Now, all of mine have been programmed, labeled, the polarity is set in the way I need it to be, and we'll look at that in another video if you're interested. But as we're now going to get them up onto the layout and installed around the baseboard, we obviously have, as you can see, installed to them, they have the rod which will come up onto the point and allow us to sway it from left to right. So none of these have been trimmed. What you see is what you get. So once it comes up onto the board, it comes through where your point is, there's going to be some excess sticking up. So they're all going to need to get trimmed. So what we basically need, this is a steel piece of rod here, and we obviously will need to cut it to size. Various different things we could use, and so many things we shouldn't be using. So let's talk about what I found to be the most practical way I would recommend. First of all, an absolute maximum full disclosure regarding safety. I don't care which method you want to do this in, but I would highly recommend you making sure you've got some approved safety glasses and or goggles on when you do this. And I'm not talking about just wearing your spectacles and hoping for the best. Seriously, depending on the methods chosen, and I've got one here, which you probably can't see in this, and where I was sampling. So basically it is one of the rods and a little bit of offcut. Now that tiny bit of offcut, when it can get flicked off, could hit your eye and make lots of damage. So let's make sure we're keeping safe. Now, according to DCC CONCEPTS, direct from their technical division, the way they'd like you to do it is to take a small file, notch in on either side, and simply snap it off. I'm sure that works, but I don't think I've got a file that's applicable to that, and seems a little problematic. All of the people that discuss it recommend putting the point up, marking where it needs to be cut, taking it out and cutting it. Sure, I think that's probably a great way to be going, but I see a few challenges in that as well. So let's start where we need to. First of all, one of the most popular ways is to take our Dremel, and in which case you'd want to be using the extension rod if you have it, and you can come down and then nip it and take it off. Seems quite good, a lot of torque. Some people, it can take a little while for it to cut, meaning the rod starts to heat up and melting bits around the point. Don't like the sound of that. And most importantly, you may need to put coat your disc with some epoxy on it before you start. That way the disc won't shatter, and that can be pretty easy to do. Not because of the material, it's mostly as humans go, holding it with a steady hand can cause a bit too much movement. So I would prefer not to be using the Dremel. Also, when you come down, again, if you don't have the extension, you can bump the track, you can cause a bit of abrasion. It can be a bit of a wild ride. So let's put that aside. Some tin snips. A little bit of overkill getting onto the layout, and you're not going to get quite where you need to go. I've read a lot of people using the piano wire cutting tools and or what they use for trimming guitar strings. That's certainly something worth looking at if you want to go down that avenue. Again, I'm just trying to find a product that is accessible and usable for all of us that ticks some boxes, including price that is reasonable. So these really no good. Let's move on over to the other side now. Now taking your best side cutters that you use for doing your models and cutting things off sprues and things like that, it need not apply. You are not going to use them at all. So let's put that in this pile right now. Taking a cheap pair of side cutters may give you a cut or two and you'll be throwing them out. So just regular side cutters, whichever they are, you can forget that at the moment. Next, we can move up to your more hardened steel and a more professional name like your Knipex cutters or something like that. Very, very good. Again, on the smaller ones like this, which again, great for using with wires, you may only get a few cuts. This really isn't quite what we're looking for. And most importantly, we're just not going to get the leverage we need to get a good cut, being that they are so small. Pop that to the side. Now, here is the surprise for all of you. Our Xuron Track Cutters, and of course different companies make basically the same things, but these are the cutters we're using to cut the steel rail, our train tracks. How on earth is this not the choice? Look at that steel track we're cutting through. I mean, these have got to go through some immense work to get the result. However, a lot of reviews and people have mentioned that some people will swear by it and use it, but people who do multiple cuts say that in time, this is only damaging it. And exactly according to this picture, of course, on the back of the Xuron Cutters packaging, you will see that they state quite clearly that this tool is not for that. So that's a big pile of what we don't need. What have we got? Well, in my application, it's going to come down to this. It is my trusty Knipex side cutters that I use 99% for every single job I need to do. However, let's not get confused. First of all, I'm just going to read this out. So it's the Knipex 7002160. Made in Germany. Make sure you're not getting a knockoff with these. First of all, these are a hardened steel side cutter and just the right size with the perfect angle that we can certainly come down in between our points, crunch and make the cut. These are exactly the tool I would be recommending to all of you. Now, of course, model railway and any hobby is subjective at the best of times. Everyone's going to have their own opinions and things like that. A bit like the track cleaning video, which I'm going to do my version on, and to be honest, is focusing on the one approach that everyone else doesn't want to use. But we'll see that later on. For the moment, this is the approach I'm going to use.
For those of you that may not have the physical hand strength cutting the rod using these cutters, I would have no problem at all recommending going up the next grade up. It will cost you a few dollars extra, but there's less hand force that will be involved. For me, again, buying this particular tool and only using it for this application and cutting some 12 to 14 point rods is probably not the best value for money, and the tool I needed I already had, and I am still physically able to manipulate it.
Let's go pop a point in now and have a look at this demonstration a bit closer up.
Point number 7 is which we removed, and forgive all the hokey pokey, and I've just run a wire directly up to it. Although I will just say that we have actually installed all the point wiring ready to go, but we're not quite finished yet. So we're just temporarily going to pop our point motor in here, and we can see it underneath. You'll notice that I did label all my point motors. As you can see, that one's number 7. Let's just swing you around. Get a picture of me as well, hey? All right, here we go. Looking good. So we've got it wired in at the moment. Just adjusted the tension as required. And what about, I'll push the button, pop the camera up here, and you can see where our point rod is certainly protruding. Right, after 10 minutes of trying to get the camera up on this angle, we can see we've got this extended bar here that needs trimming, but we want to make sure that the point will throw. Number 7, let me reach over and push that button. We better check it in the other direction. And that looks quite good. So, what do we need to do? We need to trim it. Ideally, what we'd like is for this to be in the middle. And when you purchase them, so be it. Now, when it goes a bit to the left and to the right, it's going to go down, but in the middle will be at its highest point and where I'd recommend cutting it. Now, there's just enough resistance for you to move it and make the cut, but it's certainly not an essential thing. Before we do anything, a quick reminder regarding our safety glasses or goggles. I can't speak highly enough of this. I've had a family member that's had steel in the eye, had to get strapped down with eyes open while it was extracted. If that's not enough of a warning message and you haven't had a glass of water or some liquid, just watch a YouTube video on removing kidney stones. And that's enough to make sure you're going to stay hydrated for the rest of your life. The same thing with your eyes. Let's get our eye protection on, shall we? Making this cut, it's quite straightforward. My recommendation would be coming in from where the straight section is for the cut, just to give you a bit more room. Unfortunately, if we're going to do this with the camera on, I can't do that. So what we're going to do is come down. Remember, we're going to keep the flat side of the cutters against where we're doing this at the moment. We know there's going to be some a little bit sticking out after we're done, and you'll get a better result coming in from the other side. But importantly, we're going to, if you can, hold or put something over it to minimize it destroying the rest of your layout. Just put something to hold it. We'll make our cut. And there we go. Right on schedule. Our camera completely falls down. So you know it's got to be one of my expert jobs. And of course, here is the bit that we have just trimmed off. Now, before we do anything, that gets disposed of accordingly. We don't need that going anywhere else. Now, let's come in nice and close, and you can see I've got this bit of a bubble at the top of my point arrangement. It's not interfering with the wheels or anything. I could probably do a better cut, as I said, if I could bring the cutters in on another angle. But the point is it's cut and looks quite good. I have no problems with that. So once again, and just test the operation. Back to main line operation. Very smooth. So that's all you need. Just a simple pair of cutters will get your job done, but they do need to be a good hardened steel. And as you can see from this footage from the Knipex website, this is what these things were built for. And the materials I've actually gone through, and you can see it is nice and solid. There are no gaps in the middle. There's no blunting of them whatsoever. If you want a good way of cutting and just a general good pair of side cutters to keep in your toolbox for other applications, I cannot oversell them and give you the solution that you're chasing the Knipex 7002 160. You'll probably pick them up for close to about $50 or thereabouts, but it is a wise investment, not just for your model railway, best side cutters you may ever have in your toolbox in the future. Well, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, as always, that's now going to conclude yet another video in the series. And I won't lie to you, a little bit of a surprise one. I had no idea how many options and how no one really had a clean way. They all talk about installing the point motors, but no one about that little minor thing about trimming. And the last thing I wanted to do is damage any of my tools. And I also didn't want to damage the rods or cause any complication. I want to make sure we get it all done right the first time. And this is obviously the winner for me. In fact, just have a quick peep at this close-up shot. And as I said, the other ones we'll do will actually be a little bit more flush to the tie bar itself, albeit because of where the camera was and what we were doing. So you may well see I'm going to come back later on and just run my cutter and clip it accordingly. But again, we can certainly pass a coach through, everything smooth as silk, and absolutely no worries at all. So I hope that's going to be useful for a lot of people that aren't too sure. It'll apply to any of those steel types of rods, whether you're using the Tortoise motors or other ones like that, but it really is a wise investment. And what's this you can see in the distance? Oh, that could well be your next video. We've been busy wiring up a few buildings. Yes, please do get excited about that. Until the next one, please do stay safe. We'll see you next time. Take care. Toodles.